The meeting of two geniuses and their story of cheating. I was pleased with myself when I pulled out my new ID, credit card, and cash from the safety deposit box I'd set up 9 months ago in anticipation of what was to come. Although I was pleased, I wasn't patting myself on the back because this is what I expected of myself. You see, for good or bad, I am a genius. The test showed that my IQ was 180, but I tried not to excel at it too much. Being a genius has been, in my opinion, my best and worst characteristic since childhood. By my 5th birthday, I already had the vocabulary of a graduate student. My favorite nursery rhyme was my own version of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Because of my intellectual attitude bordering on arrogance, I got my ass kicked in elementary school, especially since I advanced 2 or 3 years, until the other kids realized that I had the intelligence to get back at them, and I didn't have an inner voice telling me if something was out of line. Anyway, now I was Brad Gensler, with a driver's license and a fake letter of recommendation from a previous employer. Although I had a master's degree in physics by the time I was 16, I developed an interest in working with my hands and discovered that I had a talent for machining exotic materials to within 1/1000th of an inch. For example, they won't let some clown put threads on beryllium copper pipe when it costs over $200 a kilogram and the threads have to be ultra-precise. I worked for 2 years as a master mechanic, and that would be a good profession to learn now, I thought to myself as I emptied the safety deposit box. A job in physics would be too prestigious. With my new identity and a 1-day audition where I showed what I could do, I quickly got a job as a master machinist. I found a small apartment that was more than acceptable, bought a used car, and set out to find iGirl, something I hadn't had in months and missed so much I shuddered at the thought of it. While I didn't mind paying for the girl, hunting for her was more fun. I went to a local bar and got lucky with Sarah in 2 hours and 6 minutes. Well, it wasn't really luck, as I had a method that rarely failed if the woman had any cheating tendencies. Why would she be in a bar if she didn't have any? And which had been scientifically proven to work. The steps are simple in words, harder to execute. Approach, show value, attract, establish rapport, capitalize. Once, in a low-key manner, after stating that I had impressed Sarah with my humor and intelligence, I turned my back to her slightly and broke eye contact. When she asked me questions, I seemed reluctant to answer them, and in fact she had to repeat 2 of them because I pretended not to hear them. I spoke slowly. Once she assumed the role of stalker, I acted shy but completely compliant, including giggling once. "Is it possible that a hot chick like you could be interested in me?" Sarah turned out to be perfect for the first time in months. After 2 weeks of picking up a new girl every 3rd day, I decided it was time for a relationship. I like pickups, but a regular hunk is better if he's first class. You won't find top-notch relationship material in bars, but health clubs have it. Health clubs have a different approach, too, and you need time. Because I had a piecework job, and because I was making decent money just doing my norm, I only had to work about 4 hours a day at my machinist job, more only on special occasions, like when there were urgent projects. This gave me enough time to sign up for 2 different health clubs. Within 2 weeks, I was able to determine the optimal time to exercise at each facility and adjust my schedule accordingly. I wasn't looking for pretty faces, although that would certainly be a great bonus. I was looking for someone who obviously had a great body before and was making a concerted effort to get it back to its former state. This was my goal for a number of reasons. First, it would give me the opportunity to really charm them and get them comfortable with me, since I knew exactly how to combine unwavering support and tough love. Second, women in this position would be the most accessible. Third, I was most interested in a woman's body first, followed by intelligence and a pretty face. I had great success at Planet Fitness, meeting 3 wonderful prospects within the first 2 weeks. One of them, Connie, was a bit overqualified, but because I think I'm better than anyone else, I focused most of my attention on her. It was only after building a perfect sequence and, I thought, with mutual interest on her part, that I found out she was married. She never wore her rings during workouts, and one night when we first went out for drinks together after practice, she had something resembling wedding rings on her left hand. I asked about them. "Yes, I'm married," she said with a devilish grin as she placed her hand on mine. "But I want you to understand that if my attraction to you grows out of what is a great start, it won't affect our relationship in any way." That wasn't what I wanted to hear. Despite the fact that I consider myself better than everyone else, what I don't do is make love to married women. My past doesn't allow me to do so, nor does my most moral and unwavering ethical rule. You always keep your word, especially when it comes to love. Although I didn't immediately interrupt my date with Connie and spent the next half hour behaving as usual, I did interrupt it. I kissed her on the lips while squeezing her because she looked so damn appetizing, but it was definitely a goodbye kiss. "Damn shame," I muttered to myself as we parted ways. Not only was she unbeatable, but now it meant I had to cool my fervor at Planet Fitness for a while. I suppressed my disappointment at finding a call girl who looked a bit like Connie and paid for a nightly visit. Since I had to at least temporarily give up the other two women of interest at Planet Fitness to avoid Connie, I began to take LA Fitness, the second health club I joined, more seriously. Although my initial 2-week review didn't reveal any good prospects, I did more thorough research and found 2 opportunities. The first was wearing her wedding rings. She had forgotten she was wearing them because they interfered with her workout. The second time I socialized with her. Although I remained very friendly with her, that was the end of my interest. The second woman I only encountered when I came in at an unscheduled time. Her name was Sharon, and she had everything I was looking for without being overqualified. Sharon was recently divorced. She had no children and was 2 years older than me. She was about 5 pounds overweight and was determined to get back to her optimal weight. Although she had a pretty demanding job, getting in shape, and the weight loss that entailed seemed to be her main goal in life. It was obvious that if Sharon were 5 pounds lighter, her body would not just be smoking, but hot as a plasma. She was also clearly flamboyant, and the fact that her face was perfectly normal didn't bother me one bit. I changed my work schedule to attend the fitness club at the same time as Sharon, and soon we were workout partners, and we both adjusted our schedules so that they completely coincided. I encouraged her and complimented her while not letting her beg when she shouldn't have, even bringing her to tears once. It was the night I brought her to tears, with my harsh criticism that our relationship changed from repressed to unconditional. I comforted Sharon as she sobbed. After she calmed down, I apologized. "I'm really sorry for being so hard on you, Sharon. I guess I went too far in my criticism." "No. You were right, Brad. I shouldn't have tried to get out of it. It's just so hard to try to make my body look halfway decent again." "Sharon, you're already more than halfway decent. Light years more, in fact," I replied, looking into her still slightly weeping eyes. She smiled. I gave her a quick kiss. It was all I could do since we were still in LA. "Would you like to have dinner after we showered?" I asked. "Come to my house and I'll make dinner for you," she said, and her eyes suddenly went from crying to burning. I followed her to her house. We were inside for no more than a second when we threw ourselves at each other. We retreated to her bedroom and made love before going to bed. 2 weeks later, I moved into her house, but only after we both committed to being exclusive. I really enjoyed living with Sharon. She was smart and fun, and one of the best partners I'd ever had. Also, within 5 months of us starting to live together, her body had returned to a plasma-hot version of its former years. This was both good and bad. It was good because she was even more fun to make love and play with. It was bad because she was getting a lot of male attention, and even worse because she seemed to really bathe in it. Because of my past, I have trust issues. Also, unlike most geniuses, I'm susceptible to human emotions and can sense when something isn't quite right. Although there was no incident that made me do what I did, I went to the local courthouse and pulled Sharon's divorce case. The divorce was initiated by a verified complaint. That's where divorce begins in our state, although other states call it differently, filed by Sharon's ex-husband, not, as she told me, by herself. It alleged adultery and contained enough material, far more detail than one would expect when first filing for divorce, to make me believe it. There were few other documents because the parties came to an agreement shortly after the filing. Someone at the courthouse apparently made a mistake and left what should have been a sealed agreement on file. One interesting thing discovered in this document was that Sharon was paying her ex-child support, which she also never told me about. Now that my suspicions were finally confirmed, I installed one GPS tracker on her car and sewed the other into the lining of her favorite purse. When she came to our house at noon 2 Thursdays in a row, I set up a camera in our bedroom. Sharon is a person of habit, so it was no surprise when the GPS tracker showed that she was at our house the following Thursday at noon. When I remotely activated the camera, it was also no surprise when I saw her undressing for a guy named Jeremy, who I recognized from Los Angeles Fitness, or the two of them making a storm while lying on top of the blanket on our bed. I knew immediately what I was about to do and that I shouldn't do it, but my history has clearly demonstrated that I am programmed to respond to infidelity. What surprised me a bit was that, although Sharon is almost always ready for love or easy to talk into it, on Thursday nights she was always the aggressor. And looking back, I can't remember a single Thursday night in the last 2 months when we didn't make love. Apparently, Thursday afternoons really perked her up. For the next week, I was in what I began to call short-time mode. I had a lot to do, so I quit my job, obviously without telling Sharon, and spent all my time working on things that needed to be done. While I was able to accomplish most of the basic tasks I needed to do, I wasn't able to accomplish everything I needed to do regarding the new identity, so I reactivated the previous alias. I made love to Sharon with the lights off from Friday until Wednesday morning. When I slept with Sharon on Wednesday morning for what I knew would be the last time, I was sorry to see it come to an end. She really was a pleasure to be around, and she has a great ass. Too bad for the way I am and that she was a cheater. I didn't make love to Sharon on Wednesday night or Thursday morning because I didn't want her to stray from her routine on Thursday afternoon. I chuckled to myself when I saw that she dressed prettier than she did on other weekdays when she was getting ready for work. I left before her ostensibly to go to my now-defunct job, but I just parked a couple blocks away from her until the GPS on her car showed that she was a kilometer away. Then I drove back. It was easy to spread the concentrated form of urushiol oil, a component of poison ivy that causes rashes and itching, that I had prepared all over the blanket, of course, using extreme caution by wearing latex gloves and not touching it. I also had a gas mask on in case there were any vapors. It was a little more difficult to place the atomizer for another batch of oil where I thought it would have the most impact on my cheating girlfriend and her lover, but it was done by 11:03 a.m. All that was left to do next was to wait. As soon as the lovers entered the house, I parked my car where I was sure I could easily activate the remote control sprayer. As soon as I could see from the camera that the lovers were indeed making love, including both of them rolling around on an oiled blanket and fully immersed in the throes of bliss, I activated the atomizer. It took a full 2.5 minutes before they started coughing. God. I felt bad that they didn't have time to finish their business. It was also too bad that Jeremy had an allergic reaction, not just the usual problems, from inhaling urushiol oil, and that a naked and wheezing Sharon had to call 911. Driving out of town, I tossed the remote controls for the camera and the sprayer into a dumpster, abandoned my car in a remote part of the mall parking lot where I was sure the security cameras weren't picking up, walked to the bus station just a mile away, and disappeared. It's been 3 weeks since the start of my new life. I had just gotten my new identification papers, my old alias was not secure, and was on my way to the safe deposit box where I had put them along with my cash and was about to leave the state. As I walked out of the cheap motel I was staying at to start my new life, I heard a familiar voice say, "Stay where you are, Scott. It's time to come home." I ran. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw 2 stun guns go off. The pain was so intense that I apparently passed out. I woke up in a van from the Sunnyside home for mentally ill criminals. That's not the real name, but it could very well be. In a straitjacket. Dr. Patterson saw my eyes open. "I'm sorry we had to scare you, Scott, but I told you to stay put and don't break free," she said with her usual sweet smile. "I'm sorry, Susan," I replied. I never called her doctor, but you know me. "I'm really disappointed that you've left us, Scott. The people at the university were even more upset. You were really helping them with their esoteric physics problems, which I don't claim to know anything about." "Where's our cheerful computer man?" Dr. Ryan asks me 3 times a week. "You know, Susan, I probably would have stayed, but I didn't get to make love at Sunnyside. How can you expect someone like me with an already elevated libido to go without a girlfriend? I've told you many times, Scott, that there is no prohibition against consensual sex between patients as long as precautions are taken. Yeah, but all patients are stupid, and you're not going to let the one nurse who doesn't look like a cave woman take advantage of me. You're also not bringing in call girls. Scott, you can't expect me to allow sexual interaction between staff and patients or break the law by bringing in a call girl." "Well then, how about you, Susan? You're great love material, but you're not giving me a chance." That last remark was meant both to shock Susan and to compliment her, although I knew she was so great that it probably wouldn't have affected either. In fact, she was good enough to make me sleep with her, except that she was married, and you know my prohibition against that, so it was just talk on my part. "Oh, Scott, how flattering. You're a sexy guy, but I would have lost my medical license and my husband. And you wouldn't want that, would you? I could no longer help you deal with the impulses that drove you to kill Jenna and your brother." Jenna was my ex-wife. I reacted a little more strongly than I had with Sharon and Jeremy when I caught Jenna and my brother in my bed. If I wasn't a genius and couldn't figure out exactly how to be found insane rather than guilty, I probably would have gotten the death penalty. "Susan, I would have given up on getting well for just a couple of times lying in the hay with you." Susan giggled and then started talking about when I could meet Dr. Ryan and his team of graduate students, whom I was helping delve deeper into theories about matter and antimatter than ever before. This was something I would never have been allowed to do if I had been on death row. One of the many good reasons Sunnyside was better than prison. When I arrived at Sunnyside, some things changed. In addition to the increased security because of my escape, there was a new patient that Susan hadn't told me about. Her name was Brittany. Brittany was a tough-looking fool, like the actress in the movie Women in Prison, but even more noticeable than her rugged look was her unrivaled hot body. I stared at her involuntarily when I first saw her, hoping she wasn't an idiot like so many of the patients at Sunnyside. "What are you staring at, asshole?" were her first words to me. This might be the best body I've ever seen. I'd apologize, but I'm not the least bit sorry. I'm just horny. "Hey, natural reaction. Maybe we can try each other sometime." "I'm not that hungry yet, nut job, but hope springs eternal in the human breast, doesn't it?" Thus began my love affair with Brittany Burns. Turns out Brittany was a genius, too. In fact, and not just figuratively, her IQ was 170. However, we had more in common than that. She had also been declared insane after she killed her husband and his mistress when she caught them making love. In fact, as far as I could tell, she and I were the only people in the state, at least during the time when records were computerized, who were found not guilty of murder because we were legally insane under the irresistible impulse test, which is paramount in our state. As an alternative to not knowing the difference between right and wrong, in our state someone can be found criminally insane if he or she experienced a sudden mental shock called a dissociative reaction. And that dissociative reaction created an intolerable tension that could only be relieved by taking immediate and violent action. In both of our cases, the testimony of more than one psychiatrist supported the conclusion that we were legally insane because of this dissociative reaction. That is, we passed the irresistible impulse test. Since Brittany and I were the smartest people at Sunnyside, including staff and visitors, despite our not-so-friendly initial verbal exchange, we gravitated toward each other. I continued to help Dr. Ryan's team with their antimatter project, and she hooked up with another group at the same university that was analyzing large amounts of social science data. Brittany and I ended up sitting next to each other at every meal, and unless we were discussing some intellectual topic, I would propose to her, and she would alternately turn me on or confuse me. Once at dinner, they were giving a party for one of the feeble-minded patients, and the centerpieces were fake chess pieces. They also served cherry pie for dessert. There was nothing unusual about the latter, but it was the first time I noticed that Brittany actually ate the pie. I usually ate it, but I didn't really like it. I just wanted something sweet. An idea popped into my head. I left my pie next to me while everyone else ate theirs. Brittany finished before everyone else. I saw her looking at mine. "Are you going to eat your pie, Scott?" she asked. She never called me Scott unless she wanted something. Depending on her mood or situation, it was usually dude, douchebag, or retard. I know that's not politically correct, but she didn't claim to be politically correct. "I think I'll just throw it away," I giggled. "Then give it to me," she said, licking her lips and reaching out for it. I picked it up and pushed it away from her. "No way in hell, it's mine, and if I want to throw it away, I'll do it," I replied with a truly devilish smile. "Okay, what do you want?" she snapped, crossing her arms over her chest. "I want you to play chess with me, and if you lose, I'll make love to you." She stared at me for a long moment. Then a smile appeared on her face that rivaled mine in devilishness. "Okay, we'll play after dinner, and if you win, we'll hook up tomorrow. Deal?" she said, holding out her hand. "Deal," I replied, shaking her hand. My pie was eaten in exactly 30 seconds. She looked at me the entire time she was devouring it. After the jerk accepted the gift from the staff and everyone sang, "It's your birthday song. It doesn't last too long." Brittany and I secluded ourselves to play chess. I never lose at chess. I mean, never. She cleared my mind, saying, "Mate," she toppled my king, stood up and said, "Better luck next time, asshole," and walked leisurely away, not forgetting to wiggle her ass back and forth. I chalked up my loss to being too excited at the prospect of getting in with Brittany. When I lost to her the next 3 nights of cherry pies, thankfully they're served every 5 days. The chef enjoys making them and most of the patients love it. I was truly frustrated. The next time pie was served, I decided to show my annoyance. After Brittany swallowed her pie, she reached for mine. "No, get your hands off it. I'm going to eat it tonight." "What's the matter? You know how your little think tank can't compete with mine and can't lose at chess to a higher intelligence again?" She giggled. "You must be cheating, but I just don't know how." I giggled back. "Besides, you probably wouldn't make a good love interest anyway. You'd probably just lay around and think about England," I replied. "I'll tell you what, asshole," Brittany replied, still staring at the pie. "I'll give you a 2-pawn advantage, and I promise it'll be the most energetic love you've ever had in your life, on the remote chance that you'll win." "Okay," I replied, holding out my hand. She shook it, grabbed the pie, and ate it right off the plate without even using a utensil, and smirked as she took to licking her plate clean, looking at me intently. I do believe Brittany would have beaten me even with a 2-pawn advantage, but a shrewd ass like me sensed she was leaking the game. She must have been as horny as I was since she'd been in Sunnyside for 4 months and hadn't slept with anyone. When I yelled, "Mate," she giggled. "Okay, I guess that's what I'm going to have to do to you, as unpleasant as it is for me." "When and where tomorrow?" I asked excitedly, rubbing my hands together in anticipation. "Since it's Thursday, the only free time will be after breakfast and before we Skype with our colleagues at the university. Also, since we don't have a permit, we have to use staircase B where the camera is broken. We should have a time between 9 and 9:20. "I think I can get you off in that time." Brittany smirked. Staircase B, 9 till quarls in the morning. Deal, I smirked back. I couldn't sleep that night. All I could think about was making love to Brittany. I didn't eat anything but yogurt for breakfast. I didn't want the blood wasted in my stomach. I slipped into the stairwell first, and Brittany was 30 seconds later. Despite her comments and teasing the previous night, I could tell she was just as eager to make love as I was. We kissed passionately once, and then removed our clothes and cuddled again. Brittany wasn't lying when she said she'd make this lovemaking unforgettable. We were lucky that neither of us were hurt as a result, but we stayed paired up until the last time passed. We kissed from time to time as we silently got dressed, tried to hide our just exhausted look, and walked out of the staircase. Brittany was first and I was 30 seconds later. We were both late for our Skype sessions, but neither of us made a big deal about it. We didn't talk much that night at dinner. Then we went to pretend we were playing chess, but really we wanted to talk about what had happened. "Brittany, you're light years superior," I muttered, moving my white pawn to open the game. "I'm not going to give you my usual bullshit, Scott," she muttered back, moving her pawn towards mine. "This has been the best of my life. We need to get organized." "We'll visit Susan first thing tomorrow morning," I replied, moving my bishop. We made an appointment with Susan for the middle of the next morning, and we both apologized for not Skype chatting with our university colleagues. "What was the matter?" Dr. Patterson asked, gesturing for us to sit in the chairs across from her desk. Brittany wasn't shy with her words. "Scott and I want to make love regularly. We need to set aside an hour of our time with the varsity teams every weekday to have privacy in one of our rooms, and get out of therapy for an hour every weekend. Either that, or we need to be able to share a room." Susan didn't miss a beat. She was obviously expecting this. "So you finally found someone worthy here, eh, Scott?" She grinned. "Much more worthy," I growled. "Good. Here are the precautions you must agree to," she said, handing the document to each of us. "Sign at the bottom. Brittany and I are both fast readers. Plus, I'd already memorized the document from previous investigations, so we signed it in no time." "Great. That solves the problem," Susan said. "However, I'm not going to let either of you miss university team meetings or therapy, so I'll make arrangements for you to move in together. The obese patient in room B4 with a double bed will be discharged on Sunday. You can leave your rooms on Monday and move in," Susan replied carelessly. "What are we going to do until then?" Brittany asked. "You've been doing without for months. Surely you can make it through another 3 days, can't you?" She giggled. Brittany was about to leave, but I recognized a good thing when I saw it and quickly diffused the situation. I jumped up, stood between Brittany and Susan, and said sincerely, "Thank you so much, Susan. Now I won't have to dream of making love to you every night," as I took and kissed her hand. Susan giggled. Brittany looked like she wanted to say something, but I escorted her out the door, then turned around, smiled, and waved at Susan. "I wanted to find a place to stay for the next 3 days," Brittany griped as I pushed her away. "Don't worry. We have staircase B," I whispered. The first night Brittany and I spent together was magical. After 2 hot, athletic, sweaty lovemaking sessions on Monday night, we fell asleep in each other's arms. The next morning, we made love. Real, genuine, slow, methodical, intense, erotic, passionate love. For a week, we loved each other more than we had loved anyone else in our previous lives. Brittany was no longer hard, and much of my cynicism and arrogance was gone. We experienced the sheer joy of learning all we could about each other, often in conversations in bed after making love. 2 weeks into our relationship, I whispered to Britt, "Do you want to know a secret? I want to know everything there is to know about you." She whispered back, then bit my nose. I faked my dissociative reaction. I'd learned everything there was to know about it before I planned my brother's death, though I hadn't really intended to kill my wife. I just wanted to cripple her. "Would that make you leave me?" I said. Brittany laughed for a full minute straight, barely holding back tears. "What's so funny about that?" I asked 3 times before she regained her composure. "I did the same thing," she grinned, "though I did intend to kill both my husband and his girlfriend." I smiled broadly. "I think we're made for each other, don't you?" "Hell yes, and as long as we don't cheat on each other, we'll live long, loving, and happy lives," she replied. "Even if it wasn't written into our DNA to never cheat," I replied seriously, "knowing what each of us is capable of would prevent it ever happening. Let's run away from here, get married, and start our wonderful life together." "Okay," she said with a smile, and then she climbed under the covers and started kissing me. The heightened security since my last escape was easily overcome with information that one of the graduate students at the university I was dealing with had gotten for me, not knowing what it was for, but buying my story about how it might indirectly lead to solving one of the equations we were having trouble with. Sunday night, a week after I got the information I needed, Brittany and I first jogged over to Sunnyside and then took a leisurely stroll to the nearest town, stole a car, and were at my safe deposit box by the time the bank opened Monday morning. We got my new ID, cash and credit card, bought an innocuous used car, and were 3 states away by lunchtime. Once Brittany got her new ID, we were married 3 weeks later with the help of an Elvis impersonator in Las Vegas. 4 years after we said I do, we have a quiet, stable family life, 1-year-old twin daughters, and are happier than either of us ever thought possible. We just need to make sure we never go back to Sunnyside. Our lives are serene, knowing that we never have to worry about our spouse cheating on us. I consider my life perfect in every way, except for one thing. Every other day, Brittany serves this fucking Sunnyside cherry pie recipe for dessert. The end.